This is Get Your Entrepreneurship Together, where you'll find stories, tips, and value from successful entrepreneurs who are out there crushing it. Here's a short preview of this week's episode.
Really, we're all doing the same thing, focusing on all the battle drills, train all the time, rain, sleet, snow, hail, doesn't matter. You're just a life of suck.
Because so many entrepreneurs, when they get started, have this just burning question of how do I get clients? How do I get people to help? What did you do?
It's like the most common thing here. I don't know where to start. Well, just do something. Just do something to get yourself started.
And welcome back to the show, everyone. My name is Brian Elam. I will be your host here on Get Your Entrepreneurship Together. Today, we're going to have a great conversation focused around entrepreneurship and veterans and lessons learned. As you may know, there are tons of business ventures being started by veterans, even some active military. I mean, you've got Grunt Style, you've got Black Rifle Coffee, you've got Defender Ammunition, and the list goes on and on. I personally love these types of businesses. These people garner so much respect from me for what they've done for our country, and now getting into the field of entrepreneurship, which obviously is very near and dear to my heart and also yours as well. So today, we are going to talk with Adam Peters. He is going to give us his story, his experience, and his passion for working in the entrepreneurship space with these great people. So Adam, thank you so much for coming on, man. I am honored to have you here.
Yeah, brother. Thanks for having me. So grateful to be here and ready to just talk to your audience and tell them what's going on, man.
I love it. Let's go. So I really love it when entrepreneurs get the foundation, right? If we want to understand who you are, where you came from, so we understand you as the person, and then we can build from there into your experience and the lessons and tips and all of that stuff. So where did you grow up and how did you end up going into the military?
Yeah, man. I grew up in southern Indiana in the farm towns in a tiny little town called Poseyville. I think I had a graduating class of maybe 120, and I finished probably somewhere near the bottom. Had grades good enough to play sports, but that was about it. Really knew college wasn't for me, and kind of wanted out of small town America. Hindsight being 2020, I was running away from kind of a terrible childhood, upbringing, a lot of bullying growing up, not a lot of real friends that you would think when you were growing up. So, knowing more about myself now, I was really just kind of running away, but I lied to myself. I told myself I wanted to see the world. I wanted out of small town America. I didn't want to be working on somebody else's farm or being a teacher or working at Berry Plastics or, any of that kind of crap. So the Army was it for me. I tried to join the Air Force and the Navy as a pilot, and they laughed at me because I wear glasses. So basically told me that was never going to happen and I was going to be stuck on a ship somewhere or with some kind of shitty job I didn't want to be doing in the Air Force. So talked to the Army recruiters. They showed me all the cool videos of rappelling out of helicopters and, jumping out of airplanes. And that was it. I was sold on being an infantryman, and away I went in a month after I graduated. So that's where I started.
Wow. Well, I can definitely understand the small town America thing. I grew up in a very small town called Russell, Kansas. Graduating class, about 100 people. So I totally get it. I contemplated going into the military right after too, because I was kind of like, didn't really understand, what I wanted to do with my life. But at the time, the Iraq situation was really starting to pop off. And I was like, yeah, serving your country, but, I'm kind of a fan of living. So, and that's why, you guys and girls that are in the military, you have so much respect in my book for what you've done and what you've volunteered to do. So, I said this in the intro, but I just wanted to thank you again personally for your service to our country. Really appreciate you.
Well, of course, it means a lot. And thanks for being worth serving.
Oh, man, that's a good one, dude. Nobody's ever said that. And I've interviewed a lot of vets on this show. I take
I had to come up with something because a little secret, a lot of us, it's really uncomfortable to be told thank you for your service. I don't know if you've heard that
I've
before.
heard that before, and I believe it.
It's really awkward because what is an appropriate response? So believe it or not, that's not original to me. I can't remember his name to give him proper credit. I'll have to go back and look for it. But I saw a post on LinkedIn, and it was addressing kind of the uncomfortable nature of being thanked for your service and how to appropriately respond. And that was his response. It was thank you for being worth serving. And I was like, man, that's super fitting because you just turn it back around on them and make them feel good too.
Yeah, and it worked. Obviously, it worked.
Yeah. So that's the little story behind that.
Awesome. Well, I love it. And if you're a vet and you're listening to this, you feel that uncomfortableness. Now you've got a tool. Now you've got your
Yeah,
very
you got an
first
out.
tip from this show that you can use. So I love it. Thank you for that.
Of course.
So talking about, getting into the military, rappelling out of helicopters, doing all the cool army stuff, right? You have a wide range of experiences at your time in there. Within the infantry, is there different segments, like different quote unquote jobs within that infantry? And what did you do?
Yeah, so I was just what they call a leg. Is just basically not an airborne qualified guy. Not I didn't go to any special schools or like that. I spent too much time deployed. Really, is what happened. But yeah, inside of a typical infantry unit, you'll have some specialties. You'll have a sniper platoon. You'll have a mortar platoon. They're kind of two different things. Snipers you usually go try out for. You'll have a weapons squad in every platoon. In That's not really that special. You just kind of your senior most guy will be the squad leader for that platoon, or if you're in like a traditional light unit, it'll be a weapons platoon. That'll be your senior most E7 that's in charge of that platoon, and usually your most new privates will go to a gun team and carry really spare barrels and ammo until they prove themselves a little bit, somebody else gets promoted, then they take over the gun, kind of things like that. There's varying different jobs in there, but really all the skills are, everybody's expected to know pretty much everything except for like really the sniper platoon. You have to go to school for that. They get all kinds of special training and whatnot. So I mean, really we're all doing the same thing, focusing on all the battle drills, train train all the time, rain, sleet, snow, hail, doesn't matter. You're just a life of suck, just being, just working on tactics, man. That's really, what it comes down to. Because ultimately, if somebody gets hurt in that gun team or whatever, somebody closest to them is going to have to pick it up and know how to do it and know the tactics and all of that. So, yeah, you do have varying different, kind of skill sets or jobs, but everybody's expected to know them, and you'll run through them pretty quickly in your time, as a new guy in an infantry platoon.
Got it. And you said you spent a lot of time deployed within your service. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And maybe, there's light and darkness with anything that you do. So I really want to bookend this conversation with that. So tell us a little bit about what your experiences were like in deployment, and then what was the worst what was the worst day?
Yeah, for sure. So I did 4 total deployments. So basically every other year in my career, I was gone. So the first 3 were with Third ID to Iraq. And those were interesting because, from the first one to the third one, a lot of things changed, specifically the way we were allowed to fight. So, I can remember the first deployment particularly being pretty what you would think of war, right? Like the ROE, or rules of engagement, was pretty straightforward. Anybody out after curfew, anybody on a motorcycle, or anybody on a cell phone, no questions asked. They're getting it, right? A lot of traditional stuff going on, from going to clear buildings, or operations, locking down the city, looking for IED makers, all kinds of stuff like that. That particular deployment, I was attached to a support platoon, so we were running convoy security for the support platoon for log packs, R&R runs, really just kind of up and down the entire country, securing that convoy and the softer skill MOSs to go, really make, pick up the things that make the Army move and whatnot. The second deployment was the long deployment. That was a 16-month deployment for me. I was all over the country again. I was part of the TAC that time, so security for the higher ups, and that looked like a lot of KLE engagements or key leader engagements, going out and kind of shaking hands and kissing babies, kind of deal. Not without its trials and tribulations, and the things that you think of when you think of the global war on terror, and IEDs, of course, firefights here and there. Then the third one was really weird. We basically had no they had to be actively shooting at us for us to shoot back, kind of deal. Or, one of those situations with the ROE where it's like kind of too little too late. You know what I mean? Like somebody's already probably gotten hurt or killed before you can actually do something about the situation. Also, not a lot was going on then. That deployment, we were kind of what you would call a quick reactionary force, basically for the entire country. And kind of just to simplify that for people, essentially the sun would go down, we would get a call to have to go secure a convoy truck that got, it was a local national truck that was now supplying all of the bases. We'd have to go clean up the mess if they got hit, clean up body parts or whatever, go get them out of trouble or whatever. It was largely boring, but you could bet that as soon as the sun went down, we were going to be out all night until the sun came up. Then I PCS from Fort Stewart to Fort Lewis, Washington, and went on one more to Afghanistan. And you asked me about the worst day of my deployments was July 7th, 2012 on that Afghanistan deployment. And I don't even remember the number of WIAs we had that day, but the fight is completely different in Afghanistan. Largely, they can actually fight. They have some tactics. They have some caches set up around your area operations where they know to fall back to. They have medical equipment to treat themselves. It's a way more sophisticated operation, and they're pretty diehard, man. I was in Panjwai, Afghanistan, which is in RC South. Kind of the Horn. I was at the tip of the Horn, which is the birthplace of the Taliban. When we were there in 2012, it was the most active they're called TICs or troops in contacts in all of Afghanistan. So, we had a lot of good support with air assets and stuff. I know it sounds bad, but we killed a lot of bad guys that deployment. But we also lost a couple dudes. Navarro, particularly on July 7th. We also had several WIAs on that deployment, but July 7th we had, I think, 5 or 6 that day. And it was from the time we got up, that morning and kicked off that big operation to, I don't know, several days later. That whole thing was just a nightmare, man. I don't remember getting any sleep. I remember being pretty upset, kind of dealing with kind of the fallout of what we think had happened with that operation. Mainly, we think that one of the Afghan national, military, whatever, I forget what we called him, but we think that he was dirty and he kind of sold us out to the bad guy, if you will. Really, we were set up, and so there was a lot of things that went on behind the scenes with all of that stuff too, and it was just a terrible day, man. I struggled with that day for a long time. It wasn't until last year that I was really able to make peace with it and kind of move past it and get over it. But losing Navarro, particularly after having had a conversation about, he was about to be promoted, and he wasn't confident in his ability to lead. And I can remember sitting outside the talk the night before that operation kicked off and having that conversation with him. Little did I know it would be the last conversation I would have with him. So that's just a little insight into that day. You got to remember that's been almost a decade ago. So a lot of those memories get pretty fuzzy, particularly with all the work I've done on myself to try and move past it and deal with those things. So, that's just a little preview of what that was like. But, adding to that, war became kind of, I don't know, I almost rather be over there than be here at the time. It got easy. It was simple. It was a simpler life. The rules are really simple over there, kill or be killed kind of deal. You don't worry about kind of the day-to-day stuff. What am I going to eat for dinner? What bills have to be paid? I got to go to work at 7:30 this morning, that kind of stuff. So, I kind of got used to it, man. And I know you mentioned earlier, like you liked to live. That thought never crossed my mind. It
Mm.
really never. Even when I joined, when I was deploying, even the first few times you roll out the wire, like you're aware of what can happen, but you don't really hang on to it.
Right. You can't. I would imagine hanging on to that would be detrimental to what you're trying to do out there, because then you're just focused on, saving your own skin versus getting the mission done.
Yeah, yeah, and I just never really saw that. Like before a brief, before we'd roll out on a mission or something, like everybody's you got some kind of operation song that you listen to, or within your platoon, or you're smoking and joking largely. Even in some of those more tense moments, you're still kind of smoking and joking, kind of making light of the situation. There's a lot of dark humor involved in all that shit. So I just don't ever remember feeling like, oh, even in the thick of it, like, oh, well, this is it. This is my time. I'm gonna die. You know what I mean? Like, I just never. I don't know. I don't know what it was, and it's kind of interesting to explore it now.
Yeah, it's the functions of the mind in a situation that's almost inconceivable. You're right. It's very interesting to try to dissect why you'd be thinking that way, why you'd be laughing and joking when things are, so dark, or from somebody looking at it from the outside, be like, how can you possibly be making a joke right now? Like, well, yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have to. Otherwise, you're going to focus on all this other stuff, and then people are going to die. The wrong people are going to die, and and
yeah, yeah.
you're going to lose your mission. So yeah, it's very interesting. Okay, so we covered your background, how you got into the military, that worst day, and I want to bookend it with a positive, get some light into this. So, what was the best day that you can remember from your time in the military?
Man, that's such a hard question because again, when you look back at your career or your service, I mean, it was all great. Like, I wouldn't change any of it. All the bad, all the good. Like, I can't pinpoint one specific moment that was the best,
Mm.
but I think just in general, having been a part of that, and being a part of good units and bad units, and really, really good units, and the people inside of those units, I think was the best part. Even looking back at the training exercises at Fort Polk, Louisiana, in the swamp where it's completely miserable in the middle of July and August, it sucked at the time, but a lot of that stuff is a lot of fun because you're sucking with people that you've built these incredibly close relationships with. And those experiences, man, I haven't found anything really like it in the civilian world that you can compare it to. So I think for me, that might be the best part of all of it, is just seeing how special those relationships are, and kind of being able to look back and walk down memory lane with some of those guys about some of those events or those operations that we did, and just kind of realize, like, we're a little exclusive, and like we got to share this, and a lot of people will never know what that's like. Hopefully that makes sense. I know it's kind of a cop out answer, but honestly, like, there's not one specific moment I can think of, because if I think of like one specific moment, I'll be like, well, that really sucked in the moment. Like, I didn't like that. You know what I mean? So, just, I think the overall experience of having given, 12 and a half, almost 13 years of my life to the Army is really, I'm grateful for it, and for the relationships and the people and the skills that I got to develop. And, um, I really, that's kind of it for me.
Yep. And that's perfect, because we're going into the mindset portion of what I wanted to talk about. And that's a great way to kind of get this conversation started, is looking at it and even realizing, with all the suck, all the stuff that you had to go through that wasn't fun, didn't enjoy it at the time, but the overall experience was a net positive for you because of those relationships, the camaraderie, the fact that it was an exclusive club that not very many people get to know or understand. And that's the entrepreneurship world too. And
Yeah.
so, kind of bridging those two worlds together right now, you have your transition from the Army to civilian life. Some entrepreneurs in their career, actually most, if they are in it for the long haul, they will start over. They will start from zero again. And it can feel like reintegrating back into society. So, what was your experience like coming from the military, getting into regular life and entrepreneurship, and what did you struggle with at that time?
Well, it wasn't pretty. It was rough, and I struggled with everything, largely because I joined the Army at 17 years old. So from 17 to 30, my whole adult life, all I knew was how to be an infantryman, how to be the best infantryman I can be, how to get the mission done, and that's really it. You don't focus on kind of anything else. Of course, you have hobbies, but they're really not healthy hobbies. They look like drinking or partying. Particularly, I've done a lot of self reflecting on this. Getting out pretty close to broke because I had lived my life, knowing that I was going to deploy and be gone. Right, you make tax free money while you're over there, but then you come home and you already have another date to go back over there. So it's like, well, I'm going to enjoy life to the fullest
Mm,
while I'm home. Right. So not being fiscally responsible, not thinking about the future, but just really trying to enjoy the present because you don't know, like you alluded to earlier, and I didn't give it much thought, but you don't know if next time you might not come home. So, you know, that makes it rough because you don't have a good, most of us, and there are exceptions to every rule, don't have a good nest egg. There's not a good program that teaches us how to reintegrate into society, teaches us valuable skills. They do have transition assistance programs. I think it's called SFL TAP now, but it's largely just kind of a joke in that I remember mine, most of it was done online, and it's really just a lot of them fire hosing resources at you, but not really telling you how to leverage the resource or use the resource. Hindsight's 2020 in that, I do have a brain. I am kind of smart. I could have figured it out, but that's really the last thing you're thinking about when you're transitioning out because your whole life it really feels like it's over, right? All you've known for the last decade and a half, sometimes 2 decades for those that make it to retirement, is how to be all that you could be, or the Army of One, or whatever the slogan was when you came in, just being a soldier. And they don't teach you how to integrate and figure out who you as a person are without the military. And so, I fell into that trap. At my peak, I was drinking 2 gallons of whiskey a week just at home, not including going to the bar every single night, 9 o'clock till it closed, and drinking myself to death. Beat that, and then would start smoking weed and just be in kind of just a weed coma, kind of not really doing anything. Became lazy, would just scroll the internet, and really just in a really, really dark place, wondering why am I alive? Like, what is my purpose here? Like, what is this about? And the way I got out of that is I got hooked up with Heroic Hearts Project, and they sent me to Peru to do the ayahuasca experience journey for a week. I did an ayahuasca retreat, and it completely changed my life. I came back from that on July 7th of 2023 and immediately started, taking action on all the things that I had been analyzing in paralysis, while I was high all the time or through YouTube, and just got to work trying different things in the entrepreneurial world. Because one of the things that ayahuasca taught me is I don't ever want to work for someone else again. I want to control my time and my energy and where that goes. And it doesn't, for me, it doesn't look like having a boss ever. Like, I'll be my own boss and figure it out. So that's largely how my transition went. And how I started my business was kind of playing off of that transition. Was like, I believe that the path back to purpose for veterans, if you're really struggling, is through entrepreneurship, because you're building something that 99 times out of 100 is going to align with your core values and beliefs. It's also serving something larger than yourself. If you build a business that genuinely helps people, if you can forget about the money and really, think about the value and the problem that you're solving, uh, helping people is so much more valuable than money. And it's something that never ends. It's a constant challenge. It's constantly developing. It doesn't get stagnant. It doesn't get boring. And truly, I believe if you're building all of that, all of those three things that we just mentioned, that if you truly are passionate about it, it's not like work. It's just like living life the way that you want to live. And so I capitalized on the transition aspect of it because we don't have a good transition process. And I know that there are things that I have, been gifted through various experiences over, the 8.5, almost 9 years I've been out now, that I could hand to people day one and teach them, and they can avoid all the same things that I went through. And so that's kind of how I got started in the entrepreneurial world and what the transition looked like for me. In the transition, I worked, I managed a gun store. I was a retail salesperson at a vape shop. I delivered packages for UPS on a seasonal basis. I was in the insurance industry. I tried a million and one thing. I went to flight school and decided, I thought that was my dream, decided that is absolutely not my dream. Flying's fun, but it's not at all what you think it is. In fact, until you can, like, until you get enough hours to go to the airlines, it's a lot of bullshit flying around in a box doing the same thing over and over again for about a year and a half. And I just wasn't interested in that. It just didn't resonate with me. So, not to say that I didn't try to fit into the civilian world, but it just wasn't largely for me.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of entrepreneurs are going to feel the same way. So when you started that first process of reaching out to people that were getting out and giving them not only those resources, but more of the how to's versus just, like you said, throwing a fire hose of resources out of people. So when you started doing that and reaching out, what did that look like? Because so many entrepreneurs, when they get started, have this just burning question about, yes, I know what I want to do. I know what my value is, but how do I
Where do I
get
start? Yeah.
clients? How do I get people to
Yes.
help? So what did you do?
Yeah, so let's just start at the beginning. My best friend in the whole world, he challenged me November of last year to get on LinkedIn and post every day and find 5 people to engage with every day. And I started really just throwing shit at a wall, trying to see what stick. I started talking about, I don't even know what, personal branding. Then it changed to like SEO because my wife was an SEO and I thought I might be interested in that. Then it changed to, I don't know, various other things. It's funny because it comes full circle because now basically I've landed on personal brand again. But really what I did was what my friend had told me to do. I just started engaging with people. And then that led to me meeting a man named Colby Wecker. And he's on LinkedIn. He's a great dude who invited me to his community where I basically got mentorship. I met people who were building something, they had an offer, whether it was in a niche that I was interested in or not. It was a way to learn. So from there, I spent a lot of time in his community and got a lot of advice. And he was like, dude, you should play the veteran card. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Part of me always knew, I knew when I was leaving the Army that I wanted to find a way to lead soldiers again. And it was specific in soldiers because that's all I knew because I was in the Army. It's funny now I get to lead all branches of the military, which is really cool. So, he uncovered that for me and really helped me come up with ways that I could do this. So, of course, that leads into the content that you start putting out changes, which leads to you start engaging with more folks, kind of moving closer to the niche. And really, I got my break with Thomas McKenzie from Allegiant Vets, the Skill Bridge program on LinkedIn. I had commented on a post or something. He likes to write longer form articles. I had read the article and I'd put my thoughts on it. His comment, not verbatim, but back to me, was something along the lines of, this is exactly the type of people I need to come present to my SkillBridge programs. So he invited me on a random Tuesday to come present to SkillBridge. I had no idea what I was going to talk about. And so I did. I went and presented to SkillBridge. In the main Zoom room, there was, I don't even, close to 2,000 people, I think. And then they set up breakout rooms for each presenter. There was 2 other presenters and myself. I ended up with like, I think 400 in my breakout room. And the whole thing was, I believe the path back to purpose is entrepreneurship. I really didn't have an offer at the time. I thought I was going to be a coach kind of deal,
Right.
right? Just kind of hourly coaching. And um, I went in to present. I was prepared with a PowerPoint. And the first thing I did was like, I'm not going through this PowerPoint. I don't believe in PowerPoint presentations. I think that they're a waste of time. It's not who I am. And I just kind of gave like a 2-minute monologue about who I am, my beliefs, and where I'd been. And I just opened it up to questions for those people. And man, it awesome. First of all, I didn't think anybody was going to show up to my presentation. Second of all, I didn't think that if they did show up, I thought maybe they'd think I was full of shit or like, what does this guy know? Because I didn't really have anything to prove that, what I was talking about was true. And the overwhelming response from people, I gained like 300 followers that day. I had, I don't know, 30 or more DMs with people wanting to know more about my philosophies on entrepreneurship and like how you could do stuff like this. I ended up booking 5 or 6 meetings, 2 of which became clients, one of which is now in my community, right? Like, so it was my big break, and it really kind of validated what I was what I was, what problem I was solving. And that's the transition piece, because the Army didn't take care of me when I transitioned out. And I started hearing stories about all the other branches, and you can take a stroll down LinkedIn and you can see the posts that talk about transition and how rough it is. And so from there, I just started talking to more veterans who are in transition and really focused in on that market and that niche, and started just reaching out to people and messaging people and booking meetings with people and talking to them and how I could help them. And that informed literally everything that I've built to this point: the podcast, the community, some nonprofit work that I now get to do. It opened that door for me. It's opened so many other business opportunities for me, and it's been awesome, man. And the best thing is I get to help these people avoid the same things that I went through.
Yeah. Right. I mean, just right there, great lesson in entrepreneurship, starting with just putting yourself out there, just
Yeah.
doing something, you know. So many people get this thing in their head where, well, if I do this and I start talking about this and then it doesn't work, then everybody is going to think like I'm a fraud or I don't know what I'm talking about or all of this stuff. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree, because I have people reach out to me on a daily basis like, hey, can you help me start a podcast? My podcast launched on May 1st. It has a decent number of downloads, but it's not anything spectacular. You know what I mean? But they just reach out because you're doing something they don't know how to do, which now makes you an expert. So just the simple fact that I had put myself out there, I knew a little bit about, business operations and stuff like that. I could speak to it a little bit, but I hadn't actually built anything. Just because I had the knowledge, I was now an expert to them. And largely, I think I might have gotten lucky with the niche that I picked, having been a part of it, because one of the overwhelming things I got from a lot of veterans after and still to this day is, you opened a door for me I didn't know could be opened. Entrepreneurship is not on most veterans' radar. They don't know. And I'm not saying all, I'm saying most. I mean, there are guys, you hit on it. I know several guys who are still active duty that are running businesses, but they didn't always know about it. You know what I mean? Somebody had to educate them on that. And so largely that was really refreshing, because now it really does make me an expert, because I am telling them that it's possible and I'm giving them examples of how they can do it. And they're like, well, shit, I would have never thought of that. Thank you. You know what I mean? So it really just kind of worked out. And, maybe it's luck, or maybe it's just, speaking to my past self, right? Like maybe just taking that lesson in and like, what problem am I solving for myself? And that's powerful itself.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's exactly what it is. It wasn't luck. I personally, I'm a man of faith. I believe that we are all here for a reason. God puts us here for a reason and a purpose. And, you're obviously living that purpose. So it was no accident. I'll tell you that right off the bat. And then it absolutely stems from your experience and your own story and healing yourself and setting yourself up to be that successful entrepreneur. And you're right. You don't have to be like, you don't have to be 5, 10 years ahead of the people that you're trying to help. Like you said, you started your podcast back in May, or whatever the date was, and people were saying, "Hey, can you help me start one?" It's like, well, I just started doing this, but yeah, I guess I could give you some pointers. It doesn't have to be everything that we think that it has to be.
Just one step ahead. That's all it takes. Just one step. That's it. You know, and when I gave that Allegiant Vets presentation, the step that I was ahead of them was I took action and they didn't.
Mm. That is great. I am so glad you said that, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen that and heard that from different mentors that I've been involved with. Is there are people out there who suck at what you do. They suck at it more than you do, but they have more clients and are more successful. And why is that? Because they get
Because
out
they
there
just
and
take
do it.
action.
They take, yeah, it's
Yeah.
100% it. Yep. I am.
And I'll tell you, man, it is. It's like the most common thing I hear. I don't know where to start. Well, just do
Mm.
something. Just do something to get yourself started. But I'll tell you, after taking action that first time, after getting out of my way, my own way, long enough to just start posting on LinkedIn, every other scenario I've been, faced with in decision making where, it's required that you take action to move the needle, it's so much easier to take that action now. There's no hesitation anymore. I don't, very rarely do I have to, think hard about a decision anymore. It just becomes, I don't know, it's so much easier, I think. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask you, because obviously decision making is a very important part of being an entrepreneur, having a business. And the faster you can make that decision one way or another, the better off you're going to be. So I wanted to ask you, do you have any kind of process, be it like instantaneous, like gut check, or writing things out to figure out if this is the best path forward? Do you have any kind of process to help you make that decision?
It's really kind of just I trust my gut. Really logically in my brain, if it's not going to help what I'm currently, I mean, with my business, the aim is to make an impact on the suicide epidemic for veterans and really just keep them out of the transition hole is what I call it, right? That's that 8-year period of time where it was dark and, suicidal thoughts and ideations and really just running around wondering why the hell I'm still alive and what my purpose is. So if whatever decision I have to make is not going to move that forward, then it's probably not for me.
Mm.
Now, it doesn't apply to everything. I can't talk about all the details. So I have two best friends in the world. One of them's from the Army and one of them's a civilian guy. My other best friend came to me with a business idea the other day, and it's a no brainer for me. But it doesn't have anything to do with what I'm currently doing. So it doesn't really move the needle forward on that. It's just for me, I know who he is as a person. I know what his skills are. And he laid it out for me in perfect terms. I looked over everything and I was zero hesitation. I'm 100% in. So, but that's still really just kind of largely trusting my gut, having faith in the people that I've surrounded myself with, having faith in myself that, I can trust myself to make this decision and I can be okay with the consequences either way, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like if I do this and it fails, I can be okay with that. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make me sick at my stomach to think, oh, well, I'm going to invest this kind of money into this. And if it fails, that's it. Like I didn't get that feeling at all with this current decision. So for me, it's like, as long as I don't get any red flags kind of internally or that kind of sick at your stomach feeling, then it's probably a go, or it moves the needle with, everything I'm doing in the veteran space. That's pretty much how I make my decisions.
Excellent. And I think that's a very valid point and way to do it, because typically what that gut instinct says whether you want to believe it right off the jump or not, typically I would probably say 9 times out of 10, it ends up being the right decision if you look back at hindsight. And the fact that you said that you're uncomfortable. I mean, you're comfortable with this decision, be it a win or a loss. Like, I love the fact that you're at that place and that you said that, because again, so many people, we live in this like binary world, and if it
Hmm.
fails, then that says bad things about me, it says bad things about an entrepreneurship and the business and all this. And no, it doesn't, and it's not
At
the
all.
end.
Oh, I have great thoughts on failure. In fact, I take it as far I welcome failure in my life because to me, the way I see failure, failure exists to teach us lessons we can only learn by failing, right? So
100%.
if you didn't have the balls to take that action, knowing that you could fail, when you do fail, you learn a lesson that gets you over that next hurdle and unlocks the next step of your journey. And without that failure, you just get stuck in one spot because you're afraid. It's the large reason why I don't write down, a process for making decisions, because it gives me the opportunity. I'm the type of person that will overthink something and I will find a way to talk myself out of it.
Mm,
So I've really had to trust my gut and learn, that gut feeling you're getting about something, like you can largely trust that. If it's not a good feeling, then it's probably not the right decision for you to make. If you get no feeling from it whatsoever, then you can probably go ahead and make that decision, one way or the other. And I don't hamstring myself by overthinking anymore. It's just I'm comfortable in most of the time making a decision and living with the outcome of that decision one way or the other. It doesn't affect me because if you carry that philosophy about failure and you know that it's necessary to get to where you want to go, I'm probably going to fail, 700 more times before I get to the end of this road. You know what I mean?
yep, that's exactly it. And that every successful entrepreneur will tell you the same thing. I've failed a bunch more times than I've won. But the lesson to take away, and you just alluded to it, is failure is only really a failure if you let it stop you. And
Yep.
that's just it. And
I mean, we could even say for all those that we talked about taking action, they're already failing themselves by not taking the action. Not taking action is a failure, and you're not learning from it.
that's that's a very good point. Very good point. I'm glad you said that, because some people need that. Some people need that slap in the face realization that, oh crap, that's right. That's me. I'm failing right now because I'm not doing anything with these ideas.
Yep.
Yeah. Oof. So glad you said that.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of different aspects, your story, tips already. I want to ask for one more before we get into the meat of what you're really doing out here in the world. And that is, if you can, what is the greatest lesson you've learned so far in this entrepreneurship journey?
So two things: believing in myself and believing in other people. And those two work together. I didn't believe in myself for a long time. So largely, I didn't want to talk to other people. I was very uncomfortable talking to other people. I genuinely used to run around and say that I hated people. What I've learned is that by believing in myself, I get confidence back. And having that confidence allows me to reach out to interesting people who I think can help me along my journey. And honestly, it's been the best thing I could have ever done for myself because I believe networking is the key to everything. I really do believe the cliche saying, your network is your net worth. I've learned that firsthand over the last 10 months now. From November to now, I started with 92 on LinkedIn and I'm over 4,300 right now. So building a big network, but what comes along with a quality network is opportunity. And had I never believed in myself that I was capable of reaching out to people and having conversations, would have never opened doors for myself that I didn't know A, existed, or B, I didn't think I belonged in those rooms that those doors, blocked off. So I like to tell people, really, what's my business? I'm a professional networker. And what that allows you to do is create opportunity for yourself. And it's probably one of the most rewarding, awesome things I've ever done in my life.
Love it, man. Absolutely love it. And I 100% agree. Your network is your net worth. And the more you can put yourself out there and understand that there is no room that you are in that you are not meant to be in. Again, going back to that whole situation about, believing in God and there are no accidents, and he wouldn't put you into that room if you didn't belong there. And just
Yeah.
having that knowing before you even make that outreach to that person that you're nervous about contacting, or stepping up for that interview or taking on that new project, just knowing that you are where you're supposed to be. And even if you do, quote unquote, fail, it's only a failure if you quit. So really glad that you said all those things.
And I love how you talk. It's like, to me, failing is still a win. It's quitting that's the ultimate failure, right? Like if you look at failure like we talked about, with what it's designed to teach you, that's a win, because now you have knowledge and you won't make that mistake again. And so I love that you said that. Sorry, I just had to say that, because yeah, I was afraid to fail too, just like everybody else. I think that I still, even as far as I've come, there are still things that I'm afraid to fail on, which kind of hampers me from taking action, not to the extreme that it used to. We're talking about a lot bigger decisions now. You know what I mean? Like, it may not be the most opportune time for me to fail. I'm sure I'm going to have to learn that lesson at some point, but we can kick that can down the road a little bit, because it doesn't benefit me right now. But you also learn to see that in the future, right? Like, is this a good time to learn this lesson or not? Like, so I think it's important to talk about it like that. And if you can have the same perspective on failure that I do, your life will get so much better, because it's really not that scary.
Right. Right. Again, it's the way that we hype it up in our own heads
Hmm.
and what it means about us, about, well, really comes down to us. What it means about, me if I fail. What does that mean? What does
Yeah.
that say about me to everybody else that I care about their thoughts and opinions? And there's another thing to kind of to work on, by the way, caring about other people's thoughts and opinions about you. You're not in charge of that, and that those opinions, they don't necessarily matter. And to a degree, I actually believe that there is no such thing as bad press. Even if you mess up and somebody starts like hating on you, blowing up your post with all this stuff, well, all that's going to do is boost you in the algorithm, and more people are going to see it. And guess what? Probably the majority of those people are going to be on your side.
Yeah, I love that you touch on that. I'm waiting for the bad publicity and the bad press and the bad comments. I am excited for that stuff to come. One, because I know I've built a community of people that will just let them have it. But two, because if you just look at the numbers, the hateful comments and stuff, they more than double your reach and your engagement. So bring it on. Come hate on me. Please come hate on me.
Right.
Like I'm comfortable in who I am. I know that I'm the same whether we're on this podcast or you're in a 1 hour meeting with me, or sitting on the board of the nonprofit. I don't change who I am. I say the same things all of the time. I believe the same things, and I treat everybody the same. So come at me. I welcome it. Like, let's do this.
Yep. I love it. I'm glad we went down that road too for just a little bit, because I think it's definitely needed, that mindset shift. Again, this whole entrepreneurship game, man, it's 80% mindset, 20% action. They're both important, but it's mostly up here.
Yeah, 100% agree with you on that.
Yeah. And I want to get into now, what you're actually doing to help these veterans transition and get into the entrepreneurship world. So Talk about your container, your value proposition, if you will. What does that look like, and what are you doing for these people?
Yeah, for sure. So it all started from the strategic veteran, which I guess is now my personal brand. That I didn't know what that really looked like. In fact, that name came from just a follower on LinkedIn. We were discussing back and forth in the comments different names for businesses. This was suggested, told me to put two little salute emojis next to my name and run with it. And so I did. Then I had another creator. I did a meeting with him over in Disney Springs here in Orlando. He quickly gave me some advice like, hey, you're not the guy that sits behind a keyboard to get his message across. People need to hear you talk. And so he's like, have you considered doing a podcast? So ran with that, launched the podcast. The podcast really is where we bring on veteran entrepreneurs. We talk a little bit about their early life, what inspired them to join, highlights of their career, spend some time in their transition, and then talk about their business and kind of try to relate all of it back to what I believe, the path back to purpose being entrepreneurship. So while the podcast is a long-term play, it's a marketing tool. It's fun for me. I enjoy it so very much. So selfishly, whether it does well or not, I don't care. It's like secretly it's a master class for me to sit down with these other people and pick their brains and learn from them on things that I can implement into my own business or different industries that I might want to be in, when the time comes to invest in different industries or whatever. So and then I know that like I would have been better off if I would have seen examples. I could look at their face, look at them have a conversation with somebody else when I was in the transition hole. If I could have saw a show like mine, it would have helped me, kind of get over all that stuff I was dealing with and understand that I can just do some work and push through, take some action and kind of get to where I want to be. So from the podcast came the Stronghold, which is my paid community for veterans. And really what that is it's a member driven community. There's not a lot of stuff in there right now. We do have like dailies that are designed to challenge the way that you think and get you out of the fixed mindset from the military and put you into the growth mindset that it takes to be a successful entrepreneur, which in turn will kind of open, that narrow-minded perspective you see the world through and give you kind of a 180 degree of different perspectives in the world. So that's really just one daily goes out, you respond to it, and then others comment and give you advice. It's a place where you can come talk about your transition, where you can talk about the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever you're dealing with in your life. And you can know that there's a community behind you, 15 other people right now behind you that have been through what you've been through, faced a lot of the same challenges, and they will give you actionable advice, which is contrary to Facebook groups. I started the community because all the veteran Facebook groups on there, they just treat people like shit. I just saw one. I just did a post about it the other day where a guy really just shit on everybody who was med boarded out of the military and said, if you didn't do 20, don't call yourself a retiree. And it's like, dude, I beg to fucking
Oh my
differ. I've got a
gosh.
blue ID card that says I'm retired and I'm drawing retirement pay. So, like that kind of shit's not allowed in my community. That will get you banned for a minimum of a year. And I'm going to keep your money because it's very clear in the rules. And we're not going to heal as a community by treating each other like that. That guy clearly has some insecurities that he is running away from and projecting onto others. He is not the ideal client profile for my community. He is not someone that I would allow in my community, and nor would he benefit from the community because he's still running away from his problems instead of being a man and facing his
Yeah,
problems.
he's not in that place.
So we run weekly workshops. So we've done a networking workshop. I hosted that one. One of the members of my team just did a branding workshop last night. And at the very least, we're going to teach you, inside of the community with the resources that are in there, the bare minimum things that you need to know to start your personal brand and really get a foot in the door of entrepreneurship. Because I believe that everyone should have a personal brand. Every single person on the planet should be building a personal brand. It's easy because nobody can copy it. Nobody can steal it from you. Nobody can do it better than you because they're missing one key ingredient, and that is you. So, we'll be running next week. We'll be running an email marketing workshop, and then before we reopen the doors to the community on October 1st, there will be a kind of an entire case study of one of the more recent veteran personal brands I found on TikTok, and breaking it down and how he's making money, and show you just the power of personal branding.
Mhm.
And then we're doing master classes in there where if I can get people to volunteer, we will help them with problems that they're struggling with in their business. So basically an hour-long conversation where you bring the problem. Everybody on the call gets to give their ideas and advice and help you. You can obviously post that in the chat in the community and get help that way. And it runs the gamut, man. We've got, infinite bankers in there. We've got laser engravers in there. We have master resiliency offers who coach parents and teens in resiliency. We have a kid in there who's trying to figure out what he wants to do. He knows he wants to be an entrepreneur, and he's trying to figure out like what direction he wants to take that. But all of them have said it's been extremely valuable. That has spawned a new series that I'm doing every Friday, as long as I can get a veteran to volunteer. On LinkedIn Live, we do transition talks where it's just an hour. You come on, I'll introduce you, and you just brain dump all of the struggles you're going through in your transition to help you alleviate that. It can be cathartic, but also to put a bunch of value out there for others who may not know what we have going on over the strategic veteran and the stronghold, and call attention to other veterans who are struggling so that they know that they don't have to do it alone.
Man, it really sounds like you're covering a great amount of bases for these people.
I'm trying.
I mean,
I'm trying to cover as much
you
as I
really
can,
are.
man.
I mean, it's almost getting into the realm of therapy, like of group therapy, and also like the mastermind situation. I think is amazing, like wonderful, like having that kind of group feedback and idea generation. Like I love, that's where I really thrive when it comes to like ideas and generating solutions, is getting into a room with other people and just brainstorming. So I think it's really powerful that you're offering that. That alone, I don't know what you're charging, but that right there alone is worth the membership. Like I don't care what it costs, that is worth it.
Probably not enough.
Probably
Yeah,
not
but no,
enough, as typical.
I that was the hidden motivation behind the community, and to me, that's the ultimate value in the community, is the idea or the ideation that comes out of just being in a community of like-minded individuals who are on the same path. Because I'm incredibly gifted at coming up with ideas for everybody else's business but my own.
Mm, how about
and
that? Yeah.
and there's a few others in the community who are exactly like that. We had a post in there a couple of weeks ago in the struggles column, like, hey, I am so gifted at coming up with ideas for other people's businesses when I coach them, but I am terrible at coming up with ideas for my own. And within 20 minutes, there's 10 comments on there, ideas for how he can, scale his business or move it to the next step. And I have to agree with you that community is so important, and a community of like-minded people who are trying to do the same thing that you do. You don't have to be in the same industry at all.
No.
It just being able to come in there, voice your problem, and know that somebody else in that community has had that exact same problem, and within minutes, maybe sometimes up to a day, just depending on how busy people are, you've got 10 answers to how you can solve your problem,
Right.
where it would have taken you 6 weeks to ideate and fight with your brain about that, and kind of come up with a good idea after you killed 50 other ideas because you didn't think they were good enough. And I have to agree, to me, that's a ton of value.
It is. It absolutely is. And it's so powerful to get into a container, like you said, of like-minded people that are from and trying to do different things, different niches. But like you said, it's not about the niches, it's about a common goal. People are in this container for a common goal. Your container is, helping vets get that entrepreneurship experience and transition into civilian life and be successful. That's the goal for your container. Others containers might look different, but that doesn't mean you can't serve multiple people that have diverse backgrounds. A very important lesson right there. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words, man.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, you talked about having your own podcast and loving it, and you know, some of it for selfish reasons, and it's the same thing for me. I love doing this. I love talking with people, hearing their stories, their experience, but mostly what I love is bragging on them, because it's so
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard for us as humans, as people that give, to brag on ourselves about what we do. So that's part of my responsibility, is I get to brag on you for the amazing work and the amazing person that you are, because it doesn't get out there enough. So that's my guilty pleasure from this.
Well, I appreciate it because I'm guilty of not. I don't like promoting myself. I
See?
don't like kind of tooting my own horn, right? Like I genuinely just want to help veterans avoid the same mistakes that I made, and just live better lives, because I can't keep picking up my phone to notifications of dead brothers and sisters. It's just out of control. And when you look at the numbers, right, we lost 7,000 in the entire war, to include in Africa the global war on terror from 2001 to 2024, 23, whenever we pulled out. That number in suicides is over 150,000.
Oh my God.
So, we have 10x'd the number of KIAs in taking our own lives, and it's completely unnecessary. It doesn't have to be that way.
No, no, it doesn't. And that's kind of where I wanted to go next, because I know that you mentioned earlier that you've also opened up the nonprofit, you know, the charity side of what you're doing. So speak to us a little bit about what that is and what you're doing in that realm.
Yeah, so through the podcast and the community, another opportunity that was presented to me was to come on board with a nonprofit called QRF Up. QRF Up is a mobile phone application that really just contains a big red button. Inside you push that button, you have an option. You can either have it call 911 while it's connecting you to a licensed mental health care professional in your state, or you can leave law enforcement out of it. A lot of our users opt, obviously, to leave law enforcement and first responders out of it. So you push the button, you'll immediately be connected into a licensed healthcare professional in your state who is going to help you through whatever crisis you're going through. In that therapist is taking notes. They're really taking down the whole situation, and they're relaying that to a mobile crisis response team. That response team is made up of veterans and first responders. However, we just opened it to anyone who wants to get involved, because we need bodies, as many as possible. If you're going to be a responder, you'll end up going through about 28 hours of training through Psych Armor to understand how to respond to these events. So in the event that the mental health care professional can't de-escalate on the phone, or determines that we need to send a mobile crisis response team out, people within 100 miles of the caller's GPS location will be notified. They either accept, or they just put their phone down and go about their days. And somebody, a mobile crisis response team will be there within 40 minutes. In our pilot, it was 41 minutes and 10 seconds. They'll be on scene for about 30 minutes, 31 minutes and 40 something seconds when we did our pilot to de-escalate. We've saved over 1,300 lives in the pilot doing this. But we don't just stop at de-escalation. We're built as the organization for the de-escalation. But we're partnered with over 150 at this point, different nonprofits, organizations, companies, to provide aftercare in the form of outdoor adventure therapy, different retreats and such, counseling, not months later, but days later, or if not the next day, financial assistance, housing assistance, job placement. You name it. We're trying to really be a one-stop shop where there's continuity of care from the time you use the big red button to the time that you're de-escalated and you need more help, to in the future where you decide to come on as a responder yourself. And oh, by the way, it's not just for veterans and first responders in crisis. It's for their families too, and it's for responders who may be using, who have volunteered their time to respond, but we all have bad days, and now you don't have to go through it alone. And this actually came about because 988 is the national suicide hotline. Everybody knows that. In the month of August, they dropped 90% of their calls, but they just got a $700 million investment from the government. So they dropped like 36,000 of their 54,000 calls in the month of August.
Wow.
And it makes you wonder what they're doing with the money. Whereas, yeah, it's incredible to me. So no wonder we have a suicide epidemic in the country. And, they're not staffing people right. They're not doing it the right way. So we as a community, our board of directors is primarily veterans. We all served. And we get it, and we understand that we're the only ones that are going to be able to make change. And I think it's going to change the mental health care system and the response, as long as we can get bodies and meet the target numbers we need to be able to launch. So that's my role. I'm the director of recruiting. So anybody who this sounds interested in volunteering with this, you can check it out up qrfup.org. It's really easy. There's a big volunteer button that'll send me an email letting me know that you signed up, and then more information will come your way. It'll be a thank you. Here's some leadership opportunities that we have if you're interested. If not, continue on, start your training, and then kind of stand by and wait till we launch.
Wow. Incredible. I love the fact that it all stems from the simple push of a button. Something that anybody can do. Like, even if you are in that moment of crisis, you can still look at this and press a big button. And that is the end of your responsibility at that particular second in time. And then here comes the cavalry.
Well, and it's being used. It was just used 2 days ago, and the app is not even active. I mean, it's only active in Minnesota, but there's a team, all of us on the board and the behind the scenes of the nonprofit that still answer those calls and still get dudes help. So it's already saving lives, and we haven't even launched it yet. So you're right. It's absolutely powerful. We hear it all the time in the different meetings that we conduct is people are absolutely blown away. And this is something that's extremely needed. So I encourage, if I hear it a lot. I'm sure you might hear it a lot too. Maybe you're even one of them. A lot of people want to help veterans, but they don't know how. Well, this is a free opportunity right here, and it's not a heavy lift. It's not a big ask. Like, when you do volunteer, one of the questions it will ask you is, what days and what hours are you available to do this? If you're only available for 45 minutes, 1 day a week, that's fine. That's all we need. You know what I mean? Like, every little bit helps. Right. So, I don't, it sounds bad, but I've been dealing with the pushback, the objection of, well, how much time is this going to take? And I got kids and I got to work. And it's like, dude, like, if you can do an hour a week, just sign up. Just sign up. We need bodies, man. We just need options. You know what I mean? Because the more people that join, the more people are going to feel like they're being left out of something, or they want to be a part of something, which is going to bring more people to the organization. And then we'll have more than enough to cover, for those people who are worried about, well, I don't have enough time to volunteer. I've got XYZ going on. So really, just, if you want to get involved, go sign up. It's not that big a ask. You may never even get a call. Who knows?
Yeah. But if you do, and it works within the set hours that you put aside, there you go. You get to do something. Yeah. You get to make a real difference that's tangible, and you can live that experience. And typically, with what I've seen from people that volunteer and give of their time, when they do it and they understand not only the difference that it makes, but how it makes them feel, they do more of it.
Oh, yeah. And I'm telling you, it feels so good when you help save somebody's life. It's one of the best feelings I've ever felt in my entire life.
Yeah. Yeah. I could only imagine, but I would 100% agree that would be an amazing feeling, something that you can't experience any other way.
And I'm telling you, like, if you need to heal, this is one of the ways you can heal, is by helping others.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I learned that lesson very quickly in my 10-year span as a massage therapist. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Well, Adam, my man, this has been an incredible conversation. Your story is amazing. What you're doing out here for people is amazing. So where can people find you, get into the Stronghold, learn more about the charity? Just give us all the details.
Yeah, everything you want to know can be found at thestrategicveteran.com. Everything's there. It'll link you to all my socials, to all of the partnerships that I have, to the podcast, the community, the newsletter, any of the QRF up stuff that I'm doing. It's all right there on the webpage.
Perfect. Well, that link will be below here. So, guys, go ahead, click on that link. Go get involved. Go check it out. Support however you can. And let's help these great people that have served our country get back into a life that they can love and be proud of. So, Adam, again, I can't thank you enough for this conversation and what you're doing out there. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Oh, man, the privilege is all mine, man. Thank you so much for having me on and let me tell the story.
It's been my pleasure and my honor. All right, guys, you know what to do. Like this video, like the show, subscribe, share it out. This message, this great work needs to get out there to more people, and you can help that with just a simple and free share. So please do that. Thank you for your time and attention, and peace. We'll see you in the next one.